Hello. Today we'll be taking a look at the topic of baptism and why does it matter. Most churches today teach that it doesn't matter. It's good if you do it, but if you choose not to do it, it's still okay. It doesn't really matter. They say it's an outward sign of an inward change. I have to disagree with this based on biblical knowledge. Take example what Jesus said in Mark 16:16. It didn't seem like to Jesus that it didn't matter if you obeyed him or not, for those who love him will keep his commandments. As you can see that baptism is necessary for salvation. We'll also talk about how it's commanded by God, and it also must be carried out exactly as commanded. Now, for some insight into this truth, we'll take a look at an Old Testament text that reiterates and emphasizes this truth through the type and shadow, which you have many of these throughout the Old Testament that help us to understand the teachings of the New Testament. So, what we're looking at here is the account of the Exodus. This is when the Hebrew people, the Israelites as a nation, were freed from the bondage of Egypt, from Pharaoh's rule. You had the 10 plagues, and then Pharaoh hardened his heart to the point that it took the last one, when he lost his son, to actually let the Israelites go. And notice what God said must be done in order for the Israelites to avoid the death that was coming upon the land. All right, very specific instructions are being given here. There's no room for uh, doing it a different way. These instructions had to be carried out exactly as prescribed in order to get the desired result, which was the avoidance of the death of the firstborn of every household among men and beasts. Now, I doubt that anyone reading this passage, this account that we find in Exodus, if anyone, even the churches that teach at baptism, it doesn't matter if you do it or you don't, the ones that feel that it's not necessary for salvation, I doubt that any of those pastors or preachers or evangelists could look at the Exodus account and say that, well, it didn't matter if the people who Moses gave the instructions to followed his commandment about what type of blood to use and how to apply that blood to the house. Some people might have thought, well, the angel of death, he's in the sky. I don't think it's good enough to put it on the sides of the doors, a doorpost and a lintel. I'm gonna go ahead and just make a big red X on the roof, and he could see it better. I'll choose to be saved that way, or maybe I'll put it on the windows or somewhere else. Or maybe I want to brush the threshold of the door with it, so when he starts to walk in, he'll see the blood. No, I don't think anybody would agree with that thought. If they had not put the blood exactly as prescribed, where prescribed, and follow all the instructions that came before it after, as far as how to eat the lamb, because this later became commemorated with the Feast of Passover. If the instructions hadn't been followed exactly, if the commandment hadn't been carried out exactly to the detail and to the letter, that household would not have been saved, because they failed to obey the commandment of Moses, which was given to him by God. So we can see a lot of parallels with this account that we'll talk about later, and baptism, and how it comes together, and why this is a type and shadow of that. Now, in the next clip, the next video, audio, whatever you want to call it, presentation, I'll go into deeper and show you why and how this passage of scripture is directly linked to the blood of Christ and baptism and why those two things go together.